So today we're talking to Zack Levy. Zack has spent some time as a commercial manager at a startup incubator in Israel. He's also been a group manager at Telstra and currently is the Chief Information Officer at Reckon, a publicly listed company that offers solutions for businesses, accountants and bookkeepers. Zack, we're really excited to talk to you today. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us.
No problem. Thank you.
So if I understand correctly, Reckon is a cloud-based accounting solution. Is that correct?
That's right. So Reckon has been around for almost 30 years. Started as the exclusive distributor of Intuit's QuickBooks Quicken line of products. Started as literally importing the CDs from the US and putting them on shelves in Australia, but then evolved from localization to customization. The company grew via acquisition to expand the portfolio. But primarily around accounting software and software for accountants. As many other businesses over the last few years, the market has been heavily disrupted by other players who use cloud to deliver their services and promote their businesses. And like others, we are trying very aggressively to move into the cloud, both as the consumer of cloud, and both as an enabler to deliver services to our customers and develop cloud solutions to our customers.
Fantastic. Zack, can you tell me a little bit about what is involved in being the CIO at a publicly listed company?
So firstly, it's looking after a team of very skilled engineers who are tasked with implementing and championing the change within the business. That involves redesigning existing solution, solving old problems in new ways, solving new problems, and implementing solutions that empower us to service our customers better, and also, cloudifying legacy solutions and coming up with new solutions, cloud solutions for our customers. Because like ourselves, our customers are also interested in enjoying the benefits of the cloud. Cloud is a generic word and it means different things for different people, but for everyone it represents something that they want, and we're trying to provide that to our customers. So to get back to your question, it's managing engineers, working with productizing cloud products, all the way to looking after a disparate desktop and data center environment, helping team of developers to collaborate. We've got developers in Auckland, in Sydney, in Melbourne, and they need to work seamlessly as a single team, so enabling them to do that. Also not only keeping up with our competition, but trying to leverage the fact that we've got domain expertise and 30 years of experience, but to leverage technology and keep ahead of the curve.
Okay, so one of the key audiences that we are reaching out to are tech startups and small businesses and otherwise growing companies. And these companies are needing to hire people often quite rapidly. And in a small business, as I think you know, each new person can make quite a significant difference. And of course, hiring the wrong person can be quite costly. So I just want to briefly explore the way these businesses can potentially fast track the process of hiring people. So what non-job specific things do you look for when you're hiring top talent?
Primarily, I look at the people, because skill is out there, it's available, and it's probably easier to find skilled people than finding the right people for your business. So normally when a person comes, they don't work on their own or by themselves, they work together with a team. Both the team and the organization have a culture, and the business has a culture and has got a purpose, and it just what I look for, especially a top talent, they're not only skilled and can do their job, but they're a good fit for the organization and the team that they're going to work with.
So if you cultural fit, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the personality of the person that we're hiring and the cultural fit to the organization and the team. Yes.
And how do you explore these things? How do you test them in the hiring process?
I don't know if we actually test them, but I'm very much interested in meeting the people, especially those that we will work with very closely. So it's a lot about meeting them in person and getting to interact with them. Also, as part of our recruitment process, the partner that we work that help us recruit talent, they actually also, they use Skype as part of the recruitment process, and they tape the interview. So we actually get to almost experience the interview, and you'll be surprised how much an impact it makes when you meet a person for the first time, for the first interview. I already felt like I spent an hour with him because I've watched the interview. So I get beyond his resume that gives me a very dry overview of his past and skills. I also get a touch of the personality, whether it's a positive person, whether the person likes smiling, whether they proactive, whether they tend to talk positively about things. It tells me more about the person and the attitude as opposed to just their experience and skills.
Fantastic. I think the tip about recording those initial Skype interviews is a really good. That's a good one. I haven't heard of that before, but it's a great idea. So, how can leaders build a culture that overcomes a fear of failure and encourages experimentation?
I think the first thing is understanding that failure is not necessarily a bad thing. People associate failure with sometimes even punishment or bad consequences.
Yes.
I think the quicker you fail, the quicker you learn from it. So that's the second part. If you fail, if you get to understand what went wrong and what failed and actually learn from it and implement that to your next attempt, I think that makes failure a positive thing. I mean, think about all the things that we try to do for the first time every day in our life. How many times have we done that successfully? So a lot of us, even those of us that's got experience and are hired based on our experience, a lot of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis are not things that you've done before, but it's about how you handle those circumstances and how you take from the failings and turn that into success the next time around or the third time around. So it's about approach and it's about methodology.
So, how do you help your people understand that it's okay to try new things, and failure won't be met with punishment? How do you instill that in the culture?
It's about. I mean, we're pretty open and direct. We don't play politics, and we talk and we have very open and positive conversations about what we do and what drives us to do things. We don't tiptoe around subjects. We try not to, and it's really about an open and honest dialogue and making sure that we're aligned in terms of what we're trying to do. I think it's within our culture that that failure is not really a bad thing. We really believe in experimentation. So we believe in trying and failing as many times as we can before we take something to our customers or to live users. So we see failure as a positive thing.
I think that's a brilliant way to look at it. In startups and small businesses, there's often a lot of new CEOs and people that are managers for the first time. One of the things that I've experienced is pretty hard to get right is a management meeting. There's often too many people, common that the agenda isn't clear, and sometimes the action points that are talked about just kind of disappear. Well, firstly, do you hold regular management meetings? And if so, how do you structure those meetings?
We do, like any organization, we do have management meetings, and we all experience the challenges that you just mentioned. I share the frustration with you. But what we try to do is, what I try to do personally, and I'm in the habit of having back-to-back meetings and being invited to too many things. So I really try to make sure that every meeting that I attend, whether in person, over the phone, over other method of communication, is that I understand why I'm attending that meeting, why it's important. So whether it's through an agenda or someone explaining to me the purpose of the meeting, I want to know why I'm there. And sometimes I'll go back and I'll say, you know what, that's a really great meeting, but I don't think I necessarily need to be there. If after the meeting you think that my input is required, I'm happy to have a chat afterwards. And sometimes I'll take a note and even follow up, because it's not that I'm trying to avoid being part of that conversation. I just don't think that I'm relevant.
Right.
So first of all, being clear around what's the purpose of the meeting, and that includes our regular management meeting. We structure annually what the management meetings will be like. We reduced the frequency from weekly to fortnightly.
Okay.
We
Why did you do
even
that?
broke them.
Interesting. Why did you change it to fortnightly?
Because the people that attend the senior management meeting are the most senior and busiest people in the business,
Mm-hmm.
and you really got to think carefully where your time is spent. It's
Right.
not that you're precious or you're too good for other people, but really you're really spreading yourself thin, and there's a lot of things that you want to do and manage. So if we are to all of us spend 2 hours in the same room, we want to make sure that we do it for a good purpose, and we use that time really well. So we found that if we really questioned ourselves, and then we found that if we get together once a fortnight, that would actually work, because it allows us enough time to actually progress, take something that we've agreed into the management, and report on progress the following after 2 weeks. While a week later, sometimes you really struggle to get something progressed within that
Yes.
time frame. But
Yes.
2 weeks is definitely good enough. And what we've also done is we've separated them to every fortnight. One is strategic and the other one is operational. So we also used to bounce around, bouncing ideas and talking strategically, but then deep diving into operational and things that are happening. So we decided, hold on, we get together every fortnight. One of the meeting will focus on operational aspects and we report on operational progress, and the other one is about strategic initiatives. And then we found that we actually have enough time to discuss each in sufficient detail, and between the meeting there's actually enough time for progress to happen and then report on it. And what you find is that something that came up as part of the strategic end up flowing into the operational.
I think it's a great point, because there's a lot of businesses and teams out there, I think, that get into the habit of just holding meetings weekly just because they think that's the right thing to do. But
That's
it
right.
seems like, I mean, consistent with what you said, you need to understand the purpose of the meeting, why each person is there and what you're trying to get out of it, and then schedule them accordingly and make sure you're clear on what's going to be discussed.
That's right.
How do you track actions that are discussed in those meetings?
So we actually have strategic initiatives both from the strategic side and the operational side that we keep centrally
Mm-hmm.
for all. So we actually have to go and report on that. And essentially, if there are action items that come out of the meeting, whether we had problems and identified actions that will help us solve them, or things that have been taken, I take them. That's up to me. So I take them down and I record them myself. I use a combination of tools for task and collaboration.
And do you have your team on the same tools that you use, or does everyone use
Yes,
their own tools?
yes. I separate. I look at tasks and projects at three different levels.
Mm-hmm.
One is the personal one and the contained one. So something that ideally something like Outlook Task Manager will be good enough. So it's something that you need to remember to do, and you literally tick the box. You do it or you don't. You have a reminder or a follow-up, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
So that's on one side of the spectrum. On the other side of the spectrum, you've got your Microsoft project that's designed for a complex project with multiple streams, dependencies, interdependencies, time flows, a high level of complexity. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a sophisticated tool like Microsoft Project is very good when it comes to that. But you also have a big gap in between.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for tasks that are not that complicated, but don't have that one-to-one relationship and do require interaction with other people who are somewhat of a dependency or a contributor. And that's where there's a wide range of tools that have been developed in that space. So while that space was very much lacking 5 or even 3 years ago, now there's a lot of tools that pop up in that area, and we very much rely on them and settled on one that we use consistently across the team.
Great. I just want to dig a little on the personal productivity side of things. So, there's many techniques out there. I don't know if you're familiar necessarily with all of them, but, there's ones like David Allen's Getting Things Done. There's a
Done,
Pomodoro
yes.
technique. So
Yes.
one thing that's consistent with the research that I've explored is that there's no one technique that fits for everyone. There's no one size fits all. Is there a particular productivity methodology that you use?
It's exactly what you just said. I use the one that fits me the most. So I think I've tried some of them,
Hmm.
and I ended up with a few I don't know if I'll call it methodology, but I've got something that works for me.
Okay.
And that involves a couple of tools that help me make sure that for the short term and the long term, I've I've got I remember to do things and try to do them on time.
So tell me a little bit more about that. How do you manage the balance between short-term urgent tasks and longer-term, business initiatives?
Um, to be honest, there's no silver bullet, and there's no magic formula to make sure that one way gets short-term and long-term things done. It's all about making sure that you capture it, and there's something that grabs your attention when the time is right. So for the short-term, personal, just me, not collaborating with anyone else, I settled on a tool
Hmm.
that I can access whether I'm at the office or on the go and wherever I am. And then I make sure that if something comes up, I record that quickly. And there's a feature there that bugs me and reminds me and continue to harass me until I tick that. And at the same time, if there's something that is long term, and again depends whether it's for personal or for work, but primarily, I'll try to record that again, either in my calendar or the collaboration tool that we use at work, and make sure that it bugs me or preempts me when the time to action it comes. Um, I think that a big part of it, although there's a wide range of tools out there, one thing that's important is probably discipline. You need to have the discipline
Okay.
and the loyalty to whatever it is that you agree that you use. Sometimes it's not necessarily about the tool, but more about the commitment to use the tool.
Yep, I agree.
And if you lack discipline, I don't think there's a tool in the world that will help you be organized.
So, do you have a specific time in the day when you kind of organize yourself, or do you just do it as things come up?
It's funny that you say that, because one of the tools that I've settled it, one of the features that I liked about it is that it pops up at a particular time of the day that I will choose, and I've chosen 9 o'clock in the morning,
Yep.
and then it will pop up and it will say, Zach, how about we look at what you've got on your plate, and I get to look at all the tasks that I've got open and say, yes, I'll do that today, yes, I'll do that now. You know what, that one, I'll do it tomorrow, or that one. So I get to go over my agenda every morning,
Right.
and that was a feature in one of the tools, and I thought that, you know
Which tool
what,
is that? Which tool are you using for that?
it's any.do.
Any.do. Okay. Great.
And it's got the mobile app's got that feature that 9 o'clock in the morning,
Yep.
Zach, would you like to organize your day? And then you can actually allocate any one of your in a very intuitive and easy way, any one of your outstanding tasks. You can indicate when you wish to complete it.
That's great. So most days, 9 o'clock in the morning, you get a reminder, and then you look at what your day is going to include, and you're disciplined about sort of assessing and triaging what you need to get done in the day.
Yeah, and the days that I'm either busy to do it or lazy, I normally pay for that.
I think we all do.
Yes.
T- Tell me what you mentioned that you've often got a lot of meetings. What does your typical day look like? You've given us a sense of how the mornings start. I'm sure you're pulled in a million different directions being the CIO of a public company. So, is your day dictated by meetings typically?
Um, yes. There's
It's pretty
but
full.
yes, so normally that's my day looks like, and one of the habits that I've tried to pick up is at the beginning of the week, or sometimes at the end of the week, I try to reserve some time for myself throughout the calendar, throughout the entire week.
Yep.
So that's something that proved kind of useful, but
And
normally.
is that how you get things done? I mean, I've had a similar experience where I've been in meetings a lot during the day, and it just seems like sometimes it's impossible to actually progress stuff that's on your own plate. How do you manage that?
Absolutely. It's really a challenge, and I really don't like those days that it's 4 o'clock and I'm absolutely flustered and I just ran from one meeting to another and I haven't had the opportunity to sit by my desk and my inbox is full of new email and it doesn't feel like it's 4 o'clock, but I haven't feel like the day started. So
Yeah.
it actually started as a New Year resolution. And I decided that in order to be more productive, I actually need to attend less meetings.
Okay.
And
How do you achieve that?
it's just literally. So first of all, I block parts of the day for myself to do work. So I won't get to a day where I'm literally booked back to back by meeting and just running from one place to another. I book travel time in the calendar, so I don't accidentally, put one meeting next to the other, not taking into consideration that they're in two different places.
Yes.
And I need to travel. But I guess, and it's a bit about focus and discipline to make sure that it doesn't happen. And it's still a challenge that I deal with every single day.
One of the other challenges people seem to be dealing with all over the place is this idea of information overload. You know, we've got emails in our inbox, we've got articles and newsletters getting sent to us all the time. We have notes and actions that come from meetings, even text messages and chat messages. How do you deal with information overflow?
Again, like many, I think you've identified something that I struggle with every day. I guess that one of the main tools that I use to interact with people is email, and that's a big contributor to the information overflow.
Yep.
But again, I've tried to develop this habit of at least touching all the unread email in my inbox by the end of the day. So it's not unusual for me to finish the day after all the meetings are gone, just going through the inbox and trying to get back to everyone that tried to get in touch, even if it's just to acknowledge that I've received the email and I'll get back to them someday. And also part of it was trying to go to the people that I communicate with mostly and say, if you want my attention, if you need me to contribute to that conversation, send the email to me. If you CCing me, I'm assuming that this is kind of an FYI for your information for someday. And if I don't feel like I need to get involved or contribute, I read and move on. And I mean, this is partly an education part, but to a certain degree, especially with the team that I work with, they now know that if they want something from me, they'll write to me. And if they just want me to be across, they'll CC me, but they won't necessarily expect me to be fully briefed and across all the information.
I think that's great. I think it's a good learning for a lot of people out there that, you know, being a productive person is often about educating the people around you to make sure that your time is maximized. How do you prioritize? I mean, even just focusing on the things that are addressed to you. How do you prioritize what's on your plate?
Sometimes is a challenge, but one of the habits that that I picked up and I try to do, if I have a conversation with someone and I say, oh, we need to send an email or there's something that we need to do. Well, essentially, if I've got the opportunity to do that right now, let's not record it in an action item and try to find the time to do it later. How about we just do it right now? So a lot of the times I say, let's reach out to a person, ask for help. Let's ask if that's required. We actually do that in the moment. And then I've got less to prioritize against.
Okay.
Well, procrastination is an enemy and I try to avoid that. But I try to get to my inbox at the end of the day and make sure that I haven't missed anything.
And so in that process of kind of prioritizing things on the fly, if you will, does that process also help your team members and the people you work with understand what their priorities are?
No, so when we work in terms of our collaboration tool, priorities is very much key element in our planning. So pretty much projects involve risk, priority blocks. There are certain components and elements that needs to be incorporated to any project that we do.
Yeah.
And priority is definitely those key elements that needs to be included. So there's no point in creating a task list without being to identify what needs to sit on top.
So the priority of the things your team needs to be working on is clearly communicated to them through the tools that you use.
Absolutely, and not only that, when the tools don't allow, we priority is something that guide what we do every single day.
Right. Okay.
So we focus on that, and we offer them help with, if you get to a point where you don't know what you need to work on first, we'll help you make that decision.
Okay. And at a small business level, there's often multiple kind of large and important projects on the go, and big businesses as well, of course. But in a smaller business, I would say it's more likely that there's very little structural formality around each of the projects. So if we just take it back to basics for kind of the untrained project manager, if you will, in your experience, what are the key elements to a successfully run project?
I think the number one for me would be, before you start a project, you need to know what success looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you know if a project is successful if you haven't started by identifying success? Whether it's certain boxes that need to be ticked or an outcome to be identified, but you need to start the project being extremely clear on what the outcome that you're after. If you're figuring that out on the go, that project may never end.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got multiple people participating in that project, you'll have circumstances. One will be extremely pleased because their outcome have been achieved, but others that are extremely disappointed because they don't think that the project is successful, or they don't even think that it's been completed. So the first thing is start with making sure that you understand what you're trying to achieve and what success looks like.
Right.
And the other thing, if you've got multiple people participating in the project, you need to really make sure that they know what role they play
Mm-hmm.
in that project.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want people stepping on each other's toes, so two people doing the same task.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, you don't want a gap, because one person will think the other is doing it, and the other will think that the other one is doing it, and actually no one will end up doing it. So clear roles and responsibilities for participants is extremely important. And finally, timeframes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say that you'll do something, well, you need to be able to put a time frame on it, just so you have an idea. If you've got multiple tasks that relate to a single project, you just need to know what needs to be done by when, because otherwise that project may linger for much longer than you expect. And I guess that's part of...
Yeah, go ahead.
That's part of what success look like, project finishing by a particular time.
And I think a lot of that comes down to having a good and clear communication from the very beginning of the project. One of the things I want to ask about is, where do you stand on documentation? How much documentation do you think is necessary? Does it need to be formal? What's your take?
So I'm very big on documentation, and I think the team also is very big on documentation, because without that you'll be lost.
Mm-hmm.
There is always a balance to strike in terms of make sure that documentation is adequate, but that's not the primary purpose of the project, to generate documentation.
Right.
But on the flip side, engineers or people sometimes make the mistake of planning the time required to complete a project purely based on the engineering work or the effort associated with implementation, not capturing the documentation as part of it, but looking at it as a bureaucracy or something on the fringes that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Documentation is very much part of the implementation of a lot of projects, because without them, well, how would you hand it over to another team to support it, or whatever it is you're creating or delivering needs to be sustainable and remain there for a while afterwards for other people to engage with? How would they know what to engage in? If you need to go back to fix it or change it or enhance it or maintain it, how would you know where to go? People change jobs, move on.
Mm-hmm.
How would you train others on doing that? So documentation are extremely important. And like any other function within a business, you need to be geared to be able to produce that in a manner that is sufficient to achieve the outcome. So you need to be able to, if it's a big part of what you do and you spend a lot of time, then invest in tools that help you make that more efficient.
Right.
And if it's important to the team, spend the time to train your people on how to do it and the fact that it's important.
And are your teams trained, and do you run your projects with a specific project management methodology?
Yes and no. We do have a very senior project manager within the team.
Yep.
And he's very much trained on multiple project management methodologies. But at the same time, we also have other projects that are not managed by him. And there's an expectation that smaller teams will be self-sufficient, including the project management. That's where we arm them with the tools that we use internally.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the management team, we set guidelines as to how we want the project to manage, and they've got freedom within those guidelines. So as long as they follow them, the project will be managed within the framework. Normally it's being managed well. So if you use our tool and you identify the owners of the task and you prioritize them and you put time for them, then if we want to know something, then the project is effectively being managed.
Yeah.
So we follow common sense and basic principles,
Right.
but it's not that. But we borrow from many, from several methodologies.
So you kind of use what works based on the project and the team and the capabilities.
Yes, and a lot of the elements that we borrow come from agile contemporary methodologies.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Tell me, at ScribblePost, we're obviously pretty passionate about helping other people improve their productivity. And I don't think there's a company on earth that doesn't want to improve the productivity of what they do. What's the number one thing you think companies can do to lift their productivity?
I think, first of all, if you use, I think using tools is the right thing to do. I think we've got the privilege of having a lot of people committed to productivity, so we don't have an excuse like we had in the past. There's no tool out there that can help us with that.
Right.
But use a tool that help you be productive, because and then just be loyal to, but use that one tool and use it consistently across the organization. So everyone's the same language, everyone's the same tool, and then there's consistency across independent teams. So if you've got two teams that run two separate projects, but they use the same tool and the same methodology, if someone on top of those two teams needs to either run a comparison or understand how the two are, they only speak that one language, one tool, so it's clear to them.
And if how do you get, sorry to interrupt you, how do you get everyone using the same tool? Is that something that can be mandated from the top down, or how do you achieve that?
So it's funny that you said that, because we currently work towards that outcome ourselves. We've got a few tools that are popular across multiple teams, and they work well within the team. But when those teams need to collaborate, there's a clash, because one team prefers one tool, the other team prefers another tool, and they don't communicate between themselves. So it requires that either it requires that someone to be in the middle that can actually manually move information across from one to the other. And if you don't have a single version of the truth, then you can end up with multiple versions of the truth. So I think that's something that should be, that, like any tool. So what we do in IT a lot of the time, and in professional services, you find solutions to problems, and you can only find solutions to problem if you know first what the problem is. So what are the pain points?
Yep.
And you need to go and evaluate tools that address all the pain points. So normally you've got the must-haves and the nice-to-haves, and you've got to find the tools that definitely address all the must-haves and address as many of the nice-to-haves as possible. And I'm including the commercials around it as one of the must-haves or nice-to-haves.
Right.
So identifying that within the organization, we do use task management and collaboration tools, and we do have disparate tools. We went through all the teams that use those tools and we said, okay, you use tools because clearly you acknowledge the need. Tell us why you use it and what you absolutely need in your tool. And now let's try and find one tool that will be consistent across the organization.
Cool. And Zach, I've just got one final question for you. Putting aside global goodwill, things like world peace and philanthropy, what would be the most exciting news headline you could hope to read in the next 10 years and why?
Oh, good. Well, that's a big one. What's the most exciting? And you said I can't mention world peace.
Yeah, no world peace, no philanthropy, nothing that, warm and fuzzy. What are you interested in?
What am I interested in? Personally, I get excited over technology and innovation. That's my hobby and that's my profession. I don't know if you can take if I think we live in a world where technology took over the headlines because we definitely live in the digital era.
Yep.
We passed the industrial and we passed the social. We're now into the digital. So at the moment, I live in the era that the headlines speak to me really, really well. I enjoy companies that literally transform the way that we live and operate every way. I get excited over people that challenge the past to deliver things in the future that are different. I get excited by companies like Tesla and
Yep.
and SpaceX and Apple and people that literally just create markets and generate demand where people didn't even realize that we've got demand.
Well, I think we certainly agree on those points. It's definitely a pretty exciting time. I was saying to someone just yesterday that it somehow feels like we're still just tapping the surface of what technology and the internet can do for us, and it's pretty exciting to see what's going to be coming down the pipeline in the near future, I think.
That's right, absolutely right.
Zach, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you.